Here we go, going down around the corner. He's getting off at Venice. He's stuck in traffic. And we're gonna go, coming back north. He's looking back northbound, turn on Sawtell here. Northbound up Sawtell. Northbound up Sawtell. And cut back, he's gonna go under the freeway, eastbound on Venice. Eastbound Venice from Sawtell. All right, stuck in traffic. He's looking for the right turn here, it looks like. He's going through the gas station. Going south. All right, it's gonna go through and going southbound Sepulveda. Southbound Sepulveda. Moving southbound Sepulveda. All right, he's coming up to the 405 on-ramp again. I think he's gonna pass it though. He's in the number 1 lane. And making a went round through the red light. All right, base, we're switching over to Pacific frequency here off of West Valley. All right, coming up to Washington Boulevard. All right, making a turn. Oh, westbound, all right. They're re-engaging this as a pursuit. Up on the sidewalk and around, down. All right, we're westbound on Culver. Westbound Culver and going up, taking the northbound 405 on-ramp. Northbound 405 on-ramp. All right, we're going back north 405 here. Getting back going. Whoa, cutting back over. All right, picking up high speed here. Northbound 405 freeway and number 1 carpool lane. All right, we're going back northbound on the 405 here. Speed's picking up. We're up to 80 miles an hour. We're zigzagging all over. Okay, in the right, far right lane off the emergency lane here, coming up to the 10 freeway. Using the emergency lane, a couple close calls here. Coming up to National. All right, coming up to National and committed to R5. Looks like we're gonna pick up the 10 here. All right, we're gonna take the 10. Looks like we're gonna go eastbound on the 10 freeway. Nope, pulling the left. Yep, 10, okay, 10 eastbound, got some traffic here. It's a tight lane. All right, transition to 10 eastbound here. All right, 10 eastbound, going around the curve. All right, 10 eastbound, coming up to National exit. All right, back over to the far right. All right, passing Overland here. using all lanes of traffic here, right, left. All right. Back over to the number 2 lane. Zigzagging back and forth. Far right lane. Still going eastbound here. All right, tracking him 85 miles an hour here. We're going eastbound 10 freeway, coming up La Cienega. Over to the far right. Still zigzagging in and out. All right, passing La Cienega, Fairfax next stop ramp. All right, over to the far right lane, emergency lane, back into regular, back into the main line. Okay, coming up to La Brea is going to be the next. All right, still eastbound. Hey, Elijah, push it up a little farther if you can. He's getting away from us. All right, passing La Brea here. All right, he's into the emergency lane here, eastbound 10. Back into number 1. Traffic's pretty light still up ahead until we get to downtown. All right, we're coming up to Arlington. Next exit's Arlington here. Eastbound 10. Over to the far right lane. Over to the emergency lane. And where are we at? All right, coming up to Western. Still using the far right side emergency lane. Splitting the lanes on the Gore. Speed still 85. All right, we're coming up to the Vermont split and went through it, staying on the main line. Eastbound 10 freeway, passing Normandy, and back over to the emergency lane. .110 is going to be coming up soon here. Over to the emergency lane. All right, right, he's over in the right. Let's see if he goes through it or goes south 110 here. And over, he's gonna go. He's gonna go. Nope, he's staying on the 10. Staying on the eastbound 10. He's in the Grand Avenue exit. Alright, still tracking eastbound 10. He's getting back. Which way is he going? Alright, still going for the Grand exit. He can get back onto the 10, or he can get off Grand. I think he's getting off Grand. Alright, he's getting off at Grand. Okay, coming to the bottom of the ramp here, Grand. Through the red. Using the left side. Okay, oh, 18th, oh, just TC'd right at 18th. 18th and Hill, terminated 18th and Hill. Hit like a delivery bus. 1 out, 2 out. 1 out, 2 out. We got 2 drivers on the run, 2 others being held. All right, keep pushing forward. Elijah, just keep going eastbound here. Mister, you got to drive. Okay, southbound, making a southbound turn on Broadway. A southbound, this is the driver. 2 others were in the vehicle. Still, he's going up and over the fence. He's into the parking lot of the furniture store. East side, he's up and over a wall. Keep coming around, keep coming eastbound, eastbound. Elijah, keep pushing east around the building here. He's between the buildings. Okay, hold it right there. All right, coming, he's running southbound. All right, he's going over the other side. All right, slow it up. We're going vertical. He's going over there. Yeah. He's coming up the building. Come back a little bit to the north here. Come back to the north a little bit. I think he's climbing the... airship's got him in sight. He's climbing up the fire escape, I think, here to come around. Yeah, he's coming back out. All right, here he comes. He's coming back out. He's coming back out. He's weak of breath. He's still in the alleyway there. All right. He's trying to. All right. He's trying to climb up the fire escape. He went into the building. All right. He just went into the building. He hopped the fire escape, went in the building. That was like the. It would be the. It'd be the 1, 2, 3, third story window there, into the building through an open window or something there. The south building, yeah, south of the south side of the alley, above 1837 Main. 1837 Main, above that is that's the building there. And 18th. This is Main and Washington. The car TC'd at Broadway and 18th Street. The perimeter is being set up at Main and Washington. Driver. We got driver. Yeah, no, we stuck with the driver. I thought that CHP unit was going to take those two into custody quick because he rolled right up in the front of them, but he didn't. Come to this. Like that metro unit. I thought that oh, that's just the metro unit. I thought it was he didn't have those too. Yeah, come around to the west side. Come around. So come around to the alleyway. There's an alleyway between that building and the next one, so. Yeah, keep coming around. He's back in that north-south alleyway, or east-west alleyway. Keep coming all the way around. Keep coming around. The one that he ran into first, so come back around. Slowly kind of come back around here. All these people are looking around up here. All right, come back down to the east side. What's that? Oh, that's on the other side. That's probably... Keep coming around here, just kind of slowly. Just kind of slowly make an orbit here. Yeah, I'll keep your eyes on it. All right, come back to the northeast corner here. Alright, you can park it anywhere around here. He's on the corner there of the building. Hey, Skybox. So he's on, we're on Main mid-block between Washington and 18th here. The crash car is over there on the other intersection, but he's, but the two other passengers ran off, so they don't have them. So if you want to bring a ground crew, if you've got one coming for this, have them come to Main and 18th. I guess they can park it around there somewhere. Get a look from the corner. Alright, they're trying to get him to come down the ladder. Oh, that's interesting. All right, this guy's in custody. Hey, Elijah, come swing back over towards the car. Come west. West. Come back west, straight due west. Or actually come around here, just tighten up to where the car's at over here. Out to the west. Straight off of your nose, just slide a little, slide it over to the right. Slide to the right a little bit. Yeah, you're coming in good here. Southbound Sepulveda. Moving southbound Sepulveda. Alright, he's coming up to the 405 on-ramp again. I think he's going to pass it though. He's in the number 1 lane. And making a low, went round through the red light. Alright, base, we're switching over to Pacific frequency here off of West Valley. Alright, coming up to Washington Boulevard. Alright, making a turn. Oh. Westbound, alright. They're re-engaging this as a pursuit. Up on the sidewalk and around, down. Alright, we're westbound on Culver. Westbound Culver and going up, taking the northbound 405 on-ramp. Northbound 405 on-ramp. Alright, we're going back north 405 here. Getting back going. Whoa, cutting back over. Alright, picking up high speed here. Northbound 405 freeway and number 1 carpool lane. Alright, we're going back northbound on the 405 here. Speed's picking up. We're up to 80 miles an hour. We're zigzagging all over. Okay, in the right, far right lane off the emergency lane here, coming up to the 10 freeway. Using the emergency lane, a couple of close calls here. Coming up to National. Alright, coming up to National and committed to R5. Looks like we're going to pick up the 10 here. Alright, we're going to take the 10. Looks like we're going to go eastbound on the 10 freeway. Nope, pulling the left. Yep, 10. Okay, 10 eastbound. Got some traffic here. It's a tight lane. Alright, transition to 10 eastbound here. Alright, 10 eastbound, going around the curve. Alright, 10 eastbound, coming up to National exit. All right, back over to the far right. All right, passing Overland here. Using all lanes of traffic here, right, left. All right. Back over to the number 2 lane. Zigzagging back and forth. Far right lane. Still going eastbound here. All right, tracking him 85 miles an hour here. We're going eastbound 10 freeway, coming up La Cienega. Over to the far right. Still zigzagging in and out. All right, passing La Cienega, Fairfax next stop ramp. All right, over to the far right lane, emergency lane, back into regular, back into the main line. Okay, coming up to La Brea is going to be the next. All right, still eastbound. Hey, Elijah, push it up a little farther if you can. He's getting away from us. All right, passing La Brea here. All right, he's into the emergency lane here, eastbound 10. Back into number 1. Traffic's pretty light still up ahead until we get to downtown. All right, we're coming up to Arlington. Next exit's Arlington here. Eastbound 10. Over to the far right lane. Over to the emergency lane. And where are we at? All right, coming up to Western. Still using the far right side emergency lane. Splitting the lanes on the Gore. Speed still 85. All right, we're coming up to the Vermont split and went through it, staying on the main line. Eastbound 10 freeway, passing Normandy, and back over to the emergency lane. .110 is going to be coming up soon here. Over over the emergency lane. Alright, he's over in the right. Let's see if he goes through it or goes south 110 here. And over, he's gonna go. He's gonna go. Nope, he's staying on the 10. Staying on the eastbound 10. He's in the Grand Avenue exit. Alright, still tracking eastbound 10. He's getting back. Oh, which way is he going? Alright, still going for the Grand exit. He can get back onto the 10, or he can get off Grand. I think he's getting off Grand. Alright, he's getting off at Grand. Okay, coming to the bottom of the ramp here, Grand. Through the red. Using the left side. Okay, oh, 18th, oh, just TC'd right at 18th. 18th and Hill, terminated 18th and Hill. Hit like a delivery bus. 1 out, 2 out. 1 out, 2 out. We got 2 drivers on the run, 2 others being held. All right, keep pushing forward. Elijah, just keep going eastbound here. So you got driver. Okay, southbound, making a southbound turn on Broadway. Okay, southbound, this is the driver. 2 others were in the vehicle. Still, he's going up and over the fence. He's into the parking lot of the furniture store. East side is up and over a wall. Keep coming around, keep coming eastbound, eastbound. Elijah, keep pushing east around the building here. He's between the buildings. Okay, hold it up right there. All right, coming, he's running southbound. All right, he's going over the other side. All right, slow it up, we're going vertical. He's going over there. Yeah. He's coming up the building. Come back a little bit to the north here. Come back to the north a little bit. I think he's climbing the... airship's got him in sight. He's climbing up the fire escape, I think, here to come around. He's coming back out. All right, here he comes. He's coming back out. He's coming back out. He's weak of breath. He's still in the alleyway there. All right. He's trying to. All right. He's trying to climb up the fire escape. He went into the building. All right. He just went into the building. He hopped the fire escape, went in the building. That was like the. It would be the. It'd be the 1, 2, 3, third story window there, into the building through an open window or something there. The south building, yeah, south of the south side of the alley, above 1837 Main. 1837 Main, above that is that's the building there. and 18th. This is Main and Washington. The car TC'd at Broadway and 18th Street. The perimeter is being set up at Main and Washington. A driver. We got driver. Yeah, no, we stuck with the driver. I thought that CHP unit was going to take those two into custody quick because he rolled right up in the front of them, but he didn't. Come to this. Like that metro unit. I thought that oh, that's just a metro unit. I thought it was he didn't have those too. Yeah, come around to the west side. Come around. So come around to the alleyway. There's an alleyway between that building and the next one, so. Yeah, keep coming around. He's back in that north-south alleyway, or east-west alleyway. Keep coming all the way around. Keep coming around. The one that he ran into first, so come back around. Slowly kind of come back around here. All these people are looking around up here. All right, come back down to the east side. What's that? Oh, that's on the other side. That's probably... Keep coming around here, just kind of slowly. Just kind of slowly make an orbit here. Yeah, I'll keep your eyes on it. All right, come back to the northeast corner here. Alright, you can park it anywhere around here. He's on the corner there of the building. Hey, Skybox. So he's on, we're on Main mid-block between Washington and 18th here. The crash car is over there on the other intersection, but but the two other passengers ran off, so they don't have them. So if you want to bring a ground crew, if you've got one coming for this, have them come to Main and 18th. I guess they can park it around there somewhere. Get a look from the corner. Alright, they're trying to get him to come down the ladder. Oh, that's interesting. All right, this guy's in custody. Hey, Elijah, come swing back over towards the car. Come west. West. Come back west. Straight due west. Or actually come around here. Just tighten up to where the car's at over here. Out to the west. Straight off of your nose, just slide over to the right. Slide to the right a little bit. Southbound Sepulveda. Moving southbound Sepulveda. Alright, he's coming up to the 405 on-ramp again. I think he's going to pass it though. He's in the number 1 lane. And making a went round through the red light. Alright, base. We're switching over to Pacific frequency here off of West Valley. Alright, coming up to Washington Boulevard. Alright, making a turn. Oh. Westbound. Alright, they're re-engaging this as a pursuit. Up on the sidewalk and around, down. Alright, we're westbound on Culver. Westbound Culver and going up, taking the northbound 405 on-ramp. Northbound 405 on-ramp. Alright, we're going back north 405 here. Getting back going. Whoa, cutting back over. Alright, picking up high speed here. Northbound 405 freeway and number 1 carpool lane. Alright, we're going back northbound on the 405 here. Speed's picking up. We're up to 80 miles an hour. We're zigzagging all over. Okay, in the right, far right lane off the emergency lane here, coming up to the 10 freeway. Using the emergency lane, a couple close calls here. Coming up to National. Alright, coming up to National and committed to R5. Looks like we're going to pick up the 10 here. Alright, we're going to take the 10. Looks like we're going to go eastbound on the 10 freeway. Nope, pulling the left. Yep, 10. Okay, 10 eastbound. Got some traffic here. It's a tight lane. Alright, transition to 10 eastbound here. Alright, 10 eastbound, going around the curve. Alright, 10 eastbound, coming up to National exit. Alright, back over to the far right. Alright, passing Overland here. Using all lanes of traffic here, right, left. Alright. Back over to the number 2 lane. Zigzagging back and forth. Far right lane. Still going eastbound here. Alright, tracking him 85 miles an hour here. We're going eastbound 10 freeway, coming up La Cienega. Over to the far right. Still zigzagging in and out. Alright, passing La Cienega, Fairfax next stop ramp. Alright, over to the far right lane, emergency lane, back into regular, back into the main line. Okay, coming up to La Brea is going to be the next. Alright, still eastbound. Hey Elijah, push it up a little farther if you can. He's getting away from us. Alright, passing La Brea here. Alright, he's into the emergency lane here, eastbound 10. Back into number 1. Traffic's pretty light still up ahead until we get to downtown. Alright, we're coming up to Arlington. Next exit's Arlington here. Eastbound 10. Over to the far right lane. Over to the emergency lane. And where are we at? Alright, coming up to Western. Still using the far right side emergency lane. Splitting the lanes on the Gore. Speed still 85. Alright, we're coming up to the Vermont split and went through it, staying on the main line. Eastbound 10 freeway, passing Normandy and back over to the emergency lane. .110 is going to be coming up soon here. Over to the emergency lane. Alright, he's over in the right. Let's see if he goes through it or goes south 110 here. And over he's gonna go. He's gonna go. Nope, he's staying on the 10. Staying on the eastbound 10. He's in the Grand Avenue exit. Alright, still tracking eastbound 10. He's getting back. Oh, which way is he going? Alright, still going for the Grand exit. He can get back onto the 10, or he can get off Grand. I think he's getting off Grand. Alright, he's getting off at Grand. Okay, coming to the bottom of the ramp here, Grand. Through the red. Using the left side. Okay, oh, 18th, oh, just TC'd right at 18th. 18th and Hill, terminated 18th and Hill. Hit like a delivery bus. 1 out, 2 out. 1 out, 2 out. We got 2 drivers on the run, 2 others being held. All right, keep pushing forward, Elijah. Just keep going eastbound here. So you got to drive. Okay, southbound, making a southbound turn on Broadway. Okay, southbound. This is the driver. 2 others were in the vehicle. Still, he's going up and over the fence. He's into the parking lot of the furniture store. East side. He's up and over a wall. Keep coming around. Keep coming eastbound. Eastbound. Elijah, keep pushing east around the building here. He's between the buildings. Okay, hold it up right there. All right, coming. He's running southbound. All right, he's going over the other side. All right, slow it up. We're going vertical. He's going over there. Yeah. He's coming up the building. Come back a little bit to the north here. Come back to the north a little bit. I think he's climbing the... airship's got him in sight. He's climbing up the fire escape, I think, here to come around. Yep, he's coming back out. All right, here he comes. He's coming back out. He's coming back out. He's weak of breath. He's still in the alleyway there. All right. He's trying to. All right. He's trying to climb up the fire escape. He went into the building. All right. He just went into the building. He hopped the fire escape, went in the building. That was like the. It would be the 1, 2, 3, third story window there into the building through an open window or something there. The south building, yeah, south of the south side of the alley, above 1837 Main. 1837 Main, above that is that's the building there. And 18th. This is Main and Washington. The car TC'd at Broadway and 18th Street. The perimeter is being set up at Maine and Washington. A driver. We got driver. Yeah, no, we stuck with the driver. I thought that CHP unit was going to take those two into custody quick because he rolled right up in the front of them, but he didn't. Come to this. Like that metro unit. I thought that oh, that's just the metro unit. I thought it was he didn't have those too. Yeah, come around to the west side. Come around. So come around to the alleyway. There's an alleyway between that building and the next one, so. Yeah, keep coming around. He's back in that north-south alleyway, or east-west alleyway. Keep coming all the way around. Keep coming around. The one that he ran into first, so come back around. Slowly kind of come back around here. All these people are looking around up here. All right, come back down to the east side. What's that? Oh, that's on the other side. That's probably... Keep coming around here, just kind of slowly. Just kind of slowly make an orbit here. Yeah, I'll keep your eyes on it. All right, come back to the northeast corner here. Alright, you can park it anywhere around here. He's on the corner there of the building. Hey, Skybox. So he's on, we're on Main mid-block between Washington and 18th here. The crash car is over there on the other intersection, but but the two other passengers ran off, so they don't have them. So if you want to bring a ground crew, if you've got one coming for this, have them come to Main and 18th. I guess I can park it around there somewhere. Get a look from the corner. Alright, they're trying to get him to come down the ladder. Oh, that's interesting. All right, this guy's in custody. Hey, Elijah, come swing back over towards the car. Come west. West. Come back west, straight due west. Or actually come around here, just tighten up to where the car's at over
readiness recovery. All of these challenges are competing with no lessening of operational demand in the fight against global terrorism and with the increasing aging and overused aircraft. Today, I look forward to hearing about each service's aviation readiness, readiness recovery plans, readiness impacts to safety, and where we continue to take risk, calculated in terms of both risk to the force and risk to the mission. I fully believe that the first responsibility of the national government is to provide for the national security of its citizens, and that is especially true of our sailors, soldiers, airmen, and Marines. Therefore, it is our responsibility as members of this subcommittee to continue to better understand the readiness situation and underlying problems across aviation, and then for us to map a course which best assists in correcting any deficiencies and shortfalls. I am grateful to turn to the distinguished gentlelady from the territory of Guam, our ranking member, Congresswoman Madeline Badallo, for any remarks she may make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all the fine gentlemen that are here at the hearing today, and thank you for visiting with me so that I could become more acquainted with some of your challenges. I look forward to hearing about some of the problems that you face as an aviation community and hopefully an understanding on what the services are each doing and how Congress can support efforts to improve aviation readiness across the services. In 2016, we learned that shortfalls in our service aviation programs existed, from degraded maintenance capabilities to reduced training hours. And we began trying to address these in FY 2017, the NDAA. Just as these conditions developed over time, it will also take time to build back readiness, since these issues, of course, did not arise overnight. What we are continuing to remedy in the fiscal year 2018 NDAA are the consequences of years' worth of high operational tempo, aging airframes, degraded aircraft conditions, fewer experienced aircrews, and fewer skilled military and civilian personnel to maintain the aircraft. The services have responded by identifying the deficits and prioritizing personnel, training, maintenance, infrastructure, and logistic needs. And the committee has tried to support these efforts through budget authorizations and policy initiatives in the FY18 NDAA. However, this committee is keenly aware that these efforts are rendered less effective by the continuing impacts of sequestration and unpredictable funding through continuing resolutions. When coupled with reductions in skilled personnel at aviation depots, severe challenges in obtaining spare parts for legacy systems, late and unpredictable funding due to multiple continuing resolutions, and the unrelenting operational tempo required by today's complex security environment, it is not surprising that we are dealing with readiness challenges. So the acquisition of newer aircraft and the modernization of our existing aviation systems may bring some relief to the stress of our high operational tempo. However, we must ensure there is an appropriate balance between rushing to buy new aircraft and ensuring that we continue investing in the operations and the maintenance of the legacy fleet. Providing more funding may help, but it is not always the answer, and it has become very clear that consistency and predictability in funding is more helpful than increased budgets. So I welcome this opportunity today to hear from each witness about the challenges that they face in their service to achieve and sustain aviation readiness, and how we in Congress may be able to help. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Badallo. In connection with today's hearings, I welcome the members of the full committee who are not members of the subcommittee who are or will be attending. For unanimous consent requests to permit non-committee members' participation, I ask unanimous consent that a member who is not a member of the subcommittee on the armed services be allowed to participate in today's hearing after all subcommittee members and then full committee members have an opportunity to ask questions. Is there any objection? Without objection, such members will be recognized at the appropriate time for 5 minutes. I would like to welcome all of our members and the distinguished panel of senior aviators present today. This morning we have with us Lieutenant Colonel Chris Nolan, United States Air Force, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, Headquarters, United States Air Force. Vice Admiral Mike Shoemaker, the United States Navy, Commander, Naval Air Forces. Lieutenant General Stephen Rudder, United States Marine Corps, Deputy Commandant for Aviation. Major General William Gaylor, United States Army, U.S. Army Aviation Center of Excellence, and Fort Rucker. General Nolan, we now turn to you for your opening remarks.
Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Bordallo, and distinguished members of the Readiness Subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on the state of aviation readiness across the United States Air Force and really this whole committee across the Joint Force. As I personally look back on this opportunity, I realize that only a privileged few get the chance to testify in front of our country's lawmakers, people with the power to make a difference. And I'm excited that I can be here today to talk about a subject I'm very passionate about, regaining full spectrum readiness for the United States Air Force. I look forward to discussing with you where we are today, steps we're taking to recover, and areas where you can support in order to regain full spectrum readiness soonest. For 70 years, our 78th anniversary of this year, the United States Air Force has provided a decisive advantage to the warfighter in air, more recently space, and cyber domains. Every hour of every day, airmen support homeland defense, deter aggression from abroad, and provide a robust and reliable nuclear deterrent. However, we are quickly approaching an inflection point. 26 years of continuous operations have taken a toll on the force, and adversaries are beginning to close the technological gap. Today, our combat-coded units hover around 50% readiness rate to meet global demands, specifically for high-end conflict against near-peer adversaries. In short, the Air Force is too small for what the nation expects of it. The Air Force received $5.6 billion in the fiscal year 2017 request for additional appropriation, and we spent it wisely. We were able to fund our top priority affecting readiness, growing the force. The funding allowed us to recruit 4,000 additional active duty airmen, which we are using to accelerate readiness recovery by getting our planes back in the air. We made investments in pilot production to address our most critical shortfall, and we outfitted our battlefield airmen with the latest equipment to make them more lethal. We upgraded our fleet's targeting capabilities and increased munitions production. Finally, we funded increased levels of accessions, enhanced network security, and repaired infrastructure serving as the backbone for readiness recovery efforts. These investments will arrest our readiness decline in several critical areas, but shortfalls remain in the near term. The President's budget for fiscal year 2018 lays the foundation to restore readiness and increase joint lethality. But most importantly, an approved budget with stable, predictable funding levels will build the bridge to the future. Continuing resolutions and a return to the Budget Control Act measures will reverse all the progress we've made to this point. With predictable budgets, we can finally set the conditions necessary for the multi-year process of regaining readiness. Since 1947, the Air Force has relentlessly provided America with unmatched, decisive combat power in times of peace, contingency, and conflict. However, our advantage over potential adversaries is shrinking. Our nation requires a ready and lethal air, space, and cyber force now more than ever. America expects it, combatant commander's requirement, and with your continued support, the United States Air Force will regain full spectrum readiness to ensure our warfighters have an asymmetric advantage in any conflict against any foe. Thank you very much.
General, thank you very much. We appreciate your service so much, and we now proceed to Vice Admiral Shoemaker.
Good morning, Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Bordillo, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I'm honored to be here along with my fellow senior aviators to update you on the state of naval aviation readiness. In the next few minutes, I'll reinforce what I know will be a consistent theme from the four of us and was already echoed in the Chairman and Ranking Member's opening statements. As we talk about readiness and what it will take to dig out of the hole we're in, we appreciate your support in making our aviation forces whole again and putting us on a better path to support SecDef's mandate to increase lethality and remain ahead of peer competitors around the world. In my written testimony, I mentioned Lemoore, California, our West Coast master jet base, as a microcosm for our broader readiness challenges. And I'd like to use our recent West Coast carrier deployments as a call to action. We are meeting the combatant commander's requirement for ready, lethal carriers and air wings forward, but at a tremendous cost to the readiness of our forces at home. For example, to get Carl Vinson, Nimitz, and Theodore Roosevelt ready to deploy in January, June, and October of this year and equip their embarked air wings with the required number of mission-capable jets, 94 strike fighters had to be transferred to and from the maintenance depots or between F-18 squadrons on both coasts. This included pulling aircraft from the fleet replacement squadrons, where our focus should be on training new aviators. That strike fighter inventory management, or shell game, leaves non-deployed squadrons well below the number of jets required to keep aviators proficient and progressing toward their career qualifications and milestones, with detrimental impacts to both retention and future experience levels. Additionally, to get those air wings ready, several hundred parts had to be cannibalized from other Super Hornets across the force, further decimating the readiness of squadrons and adding significantly and unnecessarily to the workload of our maintainers. From a manning perspective, to fill gaps in those deploying squadrons and the three carriers, over 300 sailors had to be temporarily reassigned from other squadrons, have their orders changed, or get extended beyond their normal sea tour lengths, which hurts our sailors and their families, and has cascading effects on enlisted retention across the force. So what can we do to help improve readiness and quality of service? First, consistent, predictable funding that we can execute on 1 October is absolutely required. Then we must buy back the readiness we've lost from years of resource-constrained budgets. Some of it can't be recovered. It's corporate memory, like foundational flying experiences that we no longer have in a generation of pilots. Other readiness shortfalls, like the diminished stock of parts on our carriers and at our bases, must be replenished. Pressurized budgets have forced us to make difficult trade-offs to sustain the readiness of the current force, modernize that force to pace the threat, procure new aircraft with high-end capabilities and increased lethality, and add the critical manpower needed to operate and fight those forces, and win as our nation expects us to do. My job as the Navy's air boss is to work as hard as I can to give our commanders the resources they need to focus on warfighting first, be ready to operate forward, and be successful when we ask them to sail or fly in harm's way. I hope I can count on your support to deliver that commitment. In closing, although we are carefully managing risks at home, I couldn't be more proud of the way our incredible aviators and sailors are performing with quiet professionalism and excellence at sea and ashore around the world today. Their service is making a difference for our nation, and we must do all we can to keep them ready. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Admiral. We appreciate so much your service. General Rudder.
Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Bordillo, distinguished members of the House Armed Services Subcommittee and Readiness, and other distinguished members. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in the current state of Marine Corps aviation readiness. I would be remiss if I didn't wish everybody in the room a happy Marine Corps birthday. The Marine Corps continues to be the nation's expeditionary force in readiness, and Marine aviation is prepared to surge and fight anywhere you ask them to. As Deputy Commandant for Aviation, my focus is building readiness for combat. It is and it will continue to be my top priority. As we build readiness for combat, we will also balance modernizing the force as well as fully investing in our maintenance base. We watch our ops tempo very carefully, and today we have multiple aviation units engaged around the globe. There are F-18s flying combat missions from the land, from aboard Navy aircraft carriers, and operating throughout Asia. Our V-22s stand ready for combat in support of AFRICOM, CENTCOM, and we have aviation combat elements operating on amphibious shipping throughout the world. We're also dedicated to helping our fellow Americans in time of need in support of disaster relief operations. This is in addition to our standing deployments and forward posture in the Pacific, where we currently stand ready to support our 5 allies and multiple partners. Since last year, our deployment to dwell has improved slightly from an average of 1 to 2 to 1 to 2.6. This means that last year and years prior, we had Marines deployed for 6 months, but they only had 12 months at home to get ready to deploy again. This year, we were able to keep Marines home for approximately 15 months, so they were able to gain about another 3 months of readiness time. Again, minor improvement, still short of our target, which would be 6 months deployed and 18 months at home to prepare for the next deployment. Thank you for your support for additional funds we received in FY17. We have made moderate gains in readiness, but still not where we want to be. Our readiness recovery strategy is built upon sustaining our legacy fleet while modernizing new aircraft, investing in our Marines, and balancing funding into fully funding our readiness accounts. We are 43% complete with our transition of every squadron in the Marine Corps. In the past year, Marine Aviation has proved readiness by roughly 15% in our modern fleet and 10% in our legacy fleet. We are slowly adding aircraft to our flight line. However, we're still about 115 aircraft, or 20% short of where we want to be. On average, hours per crew each month increased by almost 2 hours this year. Last year, we were flying, or in 16, we were flying at 13.5 hours, roughly averaging per pilot. This year, we're 15.4. Not where we want to be at 16.9, but a slight improvement nonetheless. A key part of our readiness recovery is focusing on our Marines. We are investing in our maintenance Marines who make it all possible. Last year, we identified experience gap at some of our maintenance supervisor levels. Through an update to our MOS manual, we are now tracking prioritized advanced qualifications essential to those positions. Tracking these Marines within squadron ensures we keep the right maintainer in the right squadron at the right place. To further reduce experience gap, we are offering an aircraft maintainer retention bonus to qualified Marines that have those higher designations. Maintainers who accept the bonus remain in the squadron flight line for 2 years, supervising and growing the next generation. To date, we have about 350 Marines that qualify for this, and about 130 have accepted. So that's 130 Marines distributed throughout the Marine Corps that are actually going to stay, experienced Marines, that are going to stay in the squadron working on airplanes. Also this year, for the first time since 2011, we are giving a pilot retention bonus. So now we're addressing our critical maintenance manpower, we must invest in supply and depot throughput to support them. Our maintainers do not have enough parts and shells to sustain aircraft on the flight line. With Congress's help in 2017, again, we funded spares to maximum executable levels. In 2018 budget request that's sitting over here, we have again funded to unprecedented levels. In the past, in some cases, we've funded 25% where we were supposed to be. This year, between the Navy and Marine Corps, we're funding at full levels. We plan to continue this through the fit-up for both our legacy as well as our new airplanes. Supply depot improvements allowed us to return 30 Marine F-18s to the flight line this year from the depot and reset 13 long-term down CH-53s. That may not seem like a lot, but out of those 13 airplanes came out, we've flown over 2,000 hours in those airplanes. The 53s have, their hours have increased more than any other community in this past year. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to briefly address aviation mishaps. It is our commitment that every time we operate an aircraft, it is certified safe for flight and ready for the demands we place on it. Historically, our mishap rates have been flat, but there was an increase in FY17. While there is no direct link between low readiness rates and high Class A mishaps this year, it has my fullest attention. There is no question that naval aviation is inherently demanding discipline, and we cannot discount second and third order effects of low readiness and lack of training reps. Human factors and the pressure to be ready for the next deployment comes into play daily. Like any profession, the more you practice your trade, the better you are doing it. The true metric of health in aviation is aircrew flight hours. While we have increased our average flight hours last year, we are still below what is required. 10 years ago, a pilot averaged 16 hours per month. Today, it's 15.4, but that's only part of it. 3 years ago, typically 10 years ago, during a three-year rotation, typically a 3-year rotation, those pilots average 20% more hours during that 3 years rotation than the pilots are today. Consider the data and add that to the current operational tempo. That combined with the challenging environments Marine operate in, there's a marked difference between being current and being proficient. Conclusion for me is thank you again to this committee for all the help you've done over the years. Marine aviation, we continue to improve, but it's fragile. We need, as you would imagine, stable, predictable funding over time. We need your help, as you have in the past, to fund those readiness enabler accounts and flight hour programs so we can sustain the current slight upward tick in readiness. Recovery readiness also means transitioning to new aircraft like the F-35 and the CH-53K as fast as possible in fiscally responsible manner. Simultaneously, we're working hard to sustain, as you appropriately put out, our legacy aircraft. Mr. Chairman, distinguished committee members, we look forward, Marine Corps appreciates everything you've done. We look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you very much, General. And indeed, happy 242nd birthday to the U.S. Marine Corps tomorrow. And we now proceed with General Gaylor.
Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Bordallo, distinguished members of the Readiness Subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and address Army aviation readiness. I'm grateful to represent the Army leadership, the military and the civilian professionals, and the courageous men and women of Army aviation who steadfastly serve our nation each day. Army aviation has provided an unparalleled advantage to our nation as a fundamental element of the joint force, and there's no doubt that aviation will remain an essential element of any combat in the future. However, force structure reductions, increased global requirements, funding uncertainty, and the requirement to train our forces to a higher level of preparedness raise concerns about the overall future readiness of Army aviation. Aviation training is tough under any circumstances. However, to date, we assess that the fiscal environment, coupled with any atrophied maintenance skills or flight hours unexecuted, have not manifested themselves in aviation mishaps, which in fiscal year 17 remain below the both 5- and 10-year averages. However, we watch them very closely and are still concerned. If current trends do continue, however, particularly with reduced flight hour execution or funding and combined with a requirement to enter into a high-threat environment, historically, we do see a rise in aviation mishaps. However, the current fiscal environment and high demand for aviation do pose those challenges. Today's units are resourced to the platoon-level proficiency, which is sufficient for the counterinsurgency operations that we have been in the last decade and a half. However, to fight and win in increasingly complex environments against a more capable near-peer or peer enemy, aviation units would be needed to be at a higher level of proficiency at higher echelons. As turbulence within aviation subsides, we will ask for your continued support to assure sufficient resourcing to achieve that readiness. Readiness also has an equipping component. Aviation initiatives to sustain readiness and to meet global requirements have come at a cost to our modernization. Budget-driven force structure reductions and the current fiscal environment have significantly reduced our budget over the past 6 years and tests our ability to modernize our force and close key capability gaps with potential adversaries. In the near term, Army Aviation is working tirelessly to develop capabilities to ensure that we maintain a competitive advantage over any potential adversary. And in the midterm, we must make very difficult decisions about our legacy fleet and about the future of vertical lift to ensure that we provide capability to ground commanders that they will need to fight and win on a future battlefield. The United States Army still retains the most modern and best-trained aviation force of its kind in the world, and our soldiers, non-commissioned officers, and our officers continue to serve this nation faithfully. Army aviation remains ready to meet any future challenge, no matter the complexity or the risk. Certainly, stable, adequate, and predictable funding would enable us to transform into that more capable, lethal, and prepared force for the future. I thank each of you for your continued support. to the outstanding men and women in uniform, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify today and equally look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Gaylor, and we appreciate your first appearance before this subcommittee. And best wishes on your continued success. And beginning with General Nolan, a question I have for each, and each person on the subcommittee will have 5 minutes, strictly maintained by Ms. Dean. And so we'll proceed. The latest projections for rebuilding readiness are based on setting the conditions for readiness recovery. Could you please provide examples of the fragility of the recovery efforts, how fiscal year 2017 funding has shown results in recovering readiness, and how the fiscal year 2018 will further readiness recovery? Where are additional resources still required?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that great question. The 17 RAA really helped the Air Force. We increased our spending in our flying hour program. We increased our spending in our weapon system sustainment. We increased critical skills availability through people, through buying 4,000 more airmen that we could then put into it. And then the training resources, our ranges and simulators, we also increased spending in those areas. So those levers continue to move forward. The 2018 budget right now, if enacted, once we get the budget, will be good for us. The presidential budget continues to move it. The analogy that I would make is we have to grow the force. So along those paths, we still have areas of risk. We have a pilot air crew crisis. Our most highly stressed career field right now is AC-130 gunners. So it's just not a pilot crisis, but the pilots are our most critical shortage. So we will continue to work through that. Our maintainers, we will continue to work to train our maintainers, to experience them so that they can go from 3-level to 5-level to 7-level, which is from technician to apprentice to expert, and it takes a while to grow that force. Continued budgetary support will allow us to continue to close out in fiscal year 19 and finish our maintenance and fill up our maintenance holes where we have there. Weapon system sustainment, as we talked about, just like the other flags told you, we have challenges. For the most part, our weapon system sustainment is good. We're funded at 90% with a combination of base budget and OCO, but we still need to improve, as you and I talked about, the delivery mechanism. The logistics is the key. How do we get our parts to the far-flung small fleets, such as RC-135s out at Kadena Air Base? Those would be the areas that the continued budget pressure will allow us to continue to move forward with, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And Admiral?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we look at, I think I'll refer to the ranking member's Bordaio's comments in the beginning when he said we didn't get here overnight. It's going to take some time to dig out of the readiness hole that we're in. As I look at fiscal year 17, that with the request for additional appropriations, that was a relatively good year for us in naval aviation in terms of the flying hour count and our readiness enabler accounts. But again, it was 2/3 of the year. Our hands were tied a bit while we're still under continuing resolution. In fiscal year 18, every one of both our flying hour account and our flying account, every one of our enabler accounts is plussed up to levels beyond where it was in fiscal year 17. That's goodness. The one area I would continue to focus, and I mentioned it in my opening comments, is in the spares, the APN 6 accounts, a critical enabler for us to continue recovering readiness. So the fragility you referenced, Mr. Chairman, I think we just have to have the continued sustained funding over time to get us out of the hole we've dug.
Thank you very much, Admiral. And General Rudder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have similar with our partners within the Naval Aviation Enterprise have fully funded a lot of our accounts to our executable levels. And to give you an idea what that looks like, in FY16, for spares, we're at 83%. For FY17, with the additional money you gave us, we were able to get to 94, and with the budget that we have in now, we're going to fund it at 96. Now, those, predictable budget is always good because that allows our program managers to put those spares on contract. So the quicker we get the full budget, the quicker we can get those spares on contract. Some of the fragility of it is that as our ops tempo has not decreased, we must, one, balance our pilot production, which we're doing, and balancing our aircraft. And as an example, with our F-18 community, probably 2 or 3 years ago, we might have had 5 or 6 F-18s in the flight line, maybe 3 months before they were getting ready to deploy. And then we pull aircraft from the flight line, inject them into the squadron, and deploy them. We reduced our squadron deployments down to 10 aircraft as a flight line entitlement. And recently, to see some of the progress, although fragile, we deployed VMFA 251 into Asia with 12 aircraft, and they're doing quite well with 10 out of 12 up on a regular basis. So there is some progress being made. Fully funding those accounts has been the key to success. Thank you.
And thank you very much. And General Gaylor, you're finding out your first time here that time can be cut off. But for the record, we'll give you that question and look forward to your response. But so that all of the members of the subcommittee can participate, we will proceed with Congressman Badillo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. General Nolan and Admiral Shoemaker, both the Air Force and the Navy have identified manpower shortfalls in the maintenance communities. Now, without a sufficient number of trained and experienced maintainers, you will have challenges generating ready aircraft to support pilot training and operations. So can you describe the actions that you are taking to address manpower shortfalls in the maintenance community and assuming stable funding, and how long will it take to fill these gaps? Do we see any of it presently, or is it still in the future?
Yes, ma'am, we are experiencing those problems. As I said, in our maintenance field, we are growing. 4,000 maintainers in 17 is what we're doing, and we expect to close out in 19 to continue to fill those gaps. The other thing we're doing is we're moving maintainers where we can into combat-coded units. So for instance, as we stand up F-35 units, our training units, we are using contract solutions so that we can move our maintainers into the combat-coded units. Then as we grow our maintenance and fill our maintenance manning, we will then come back and put blue suit maintenance back into those organizations. But as I said, it takes a while to grow that capability to a 3, to a 5, to a 7 level, ma'am.
Thank you. And also to you, Admiral Shoemaker.
Thank you, ma'am. So in the so I think in the aviation ranks, at least in our overall accession program in 17, we increased those accessions from 32,000 to 35,200. That will take a while to get to the fleet. We're living off, I think, the largest of a fiscal year 13, a very good recruiting year. Those sailors are all now getting to the end of their initial tours and choosing to go to taking shore duty or choosing to separate. A couple of things we've done to increase the experience level and the level of the maintainers in our fleet squadrons is a couple policy adjustments. One were contract extensions that we offered for sailors on sea duty. We had almost 1,000 take that for over a year each. So that's about 1,000 years of sea duty that we increased there. The other one was an extension to the higher tenure gates, the changes to the higher tenure gates. That also added about 1,000 years of sea duty into our squadrons. As best we can, we're also trying to recycle and reutilize aviation experience in the same type model series, so we avoid the training requirements and costs as they show up and transfer between squadrons. That's an initiative that's getting traction in Millington and our personnel command. The last one is, I know in our fiscal year 18 budget, our request is for additional accessions, and I think that will help us. But they take a little while to get to the fleet, and we'll continue to work those policies in the meantime.
Well, thank you very much. And my last question is to General Gaylor. Can you share, General, with the committee how recommendations from the Holistic Aviation Assessment Task Force, which is directed by General Milley, has improved Army readiness? And can you highlight some of the recommendations that have been implemented or that you plan to implement in fiscal year 2018, and how they will produce measurable readiness improvements?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for the question. So, of course, General Milley tasked Lieutenant General Mangum to conduct a holistic aviation task force assessment. He came up with 63 recommendations, of which 30 of them are completed to date and or have a plan of action to complete. The remainder will be completed by the end of FY18. Most significantly, really are in the areas of doctrine development, where we have to align our doctrine to better stay linked with a potential future battlefield and with the greater Army. Also in training, we have made great strides in adjusting training to bring our forces to a higher level of collective training, which would be necessary on a future modern battlefield, to include UAS integration, unmanned aerial systems integration, and teaming with manned systems. Really, a third area that is most significant is in the maintainer arena. We have some atrophied skills as a result of a few events in the past few years. So we're focusing very heavily on standardizing a maintainer training program, not only to get all maintainers to the requisite standard, but also to help further kind of increase their maintenance knowledge. Certainly when they achieve a higher rank, they would need that certain higher level of knowledge. So it's been very effective for us, and we look forward to completing it.
Thank you very much, General. Now I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Badayo. And now we proceed to Councilman Austin Scott of Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Nolan, good to see you again. Talk with you a little bit about Moody Air Force Base and the A-29 Super Tucano training program. Began there in 2015 with the Afghan Air Force, and I know it's been extended to 2020. Now we're training the Lebanese Air Force in a similar program. Can you explain how this program works within the overall strategy of the Air Force?
Congressman Scott, great question. Thank you, sir. This has been a model program, and this is in line with the Secretary of Defense guidance that our national military strategy is in, with, and through coalition partners and allies. So the Afghan A-29 program has been successful because what we've done is we've worked with our government to acquire those airplanes and then transfer those airplanes to the Afghan Air Force. Simultaneously, we brought active duty, reserve, and guard members in to train with the Afghan pilots to get them up to speed. And then we've supplemented them once they go into Afghanistan with air advisors who are with them, taking them through their combat missions. We've seen it to be very effective in helping to train the Afghan Air Force. The Lebanese program is initiated right now. We've also done some work with the Lebanese Air Force to help them with facilities in Lebanon, and we're moving forward along the same model. Our chief believes this is a model of success for the future. We'll try to continue to build on it.
I agree with you. I mean, the coalition partners, the more assets that we can give them, the better off we're going to be. And some have asked how this would actually helps with U.S. Air Force pilot training and the readiness for that. And could you hit on the point of how it decreases pressure on U.S. pilot capacity to carry out the sorties in these other countries?
Well, great question again. So for instance, in Afghanistan, if we have limited capability as we look across the region, and if we have an Afghan Air Force that can talk to the CANDEC down to the battalion level and do that close air support that doesn't require F-16s overhead or an MQ-9 Reaper overhead. So therefore, it's enabling them to be successful. We're also training their joint tactical air controllers so that they control it, so it becomes organic to the Afghan Air Force, which reduces the demand on our joint force.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, General. You know, I have to mention the J-STARS and the C2ISR capabilities. We've all heard that we don't have enough of that capacity, and I just look forward to proceeding with the J-STARS recapitalization, and certainly appreciate any support that any of you can give with us in filling that gap. General Gaylor, graduate from North Georgia Military, I believe. Is that correct? The delayed risk in infrastructure has increasingly degraded in aviation readiness. Last year, I had concerns about the aging maintenance hangars and support combat aviation units. We've received the Army Combat Aviation Hangar Sustainment Report, which detailed the Get Well plan. Are we on track to meet the 80% adequate facilities rating no later than 2025?
Sir, it certainly depends on levels of funding between now and 2025. We currently have 9 active duty installations that have infrastructure needs that we rate as significant. And even above hangar facilities, we have facility requirements for the prevention of corrosion on repair parts. In FY16, we lost $16.2 million worth of repair parts just to corrosion alone. So we're working at very hard to get a steady funding stream and priority to that infrastructure repair and all the installations, but also specifically for that corrosion prevention, which was another holistic task force review. But we do have a lot of work left to do, sir.
General, I have just a few seconds left, but specifically with regard to Hunter Army Airfield, can you update us on the hangar repairs there?
I believe I can. We did have one hangar that was approved for improvement work beginning in '22 to be complete by FY24. The General Support Aviation Battalion hangar that's part of that complex is the #1 priority on FORSCOM's military construction priority list, so we are making some progress.
Thank you, General. Gentlemen, thank you for your service, and I yield the remainder of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman Scott. We now proceed to Congressman Anthony Brown of Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by saying that I recently visited with the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade from 10th Mountain in Powitz, Poland, and what those young men and women are doing is phenomenal. They're working interoperability issues with their counterparts. They're understanding the terrain. And I think they're really laying the groundwork for an enduring rotational, although one day I would like to see it permanent presence of Army aviation in Europe. Doing a great job with the UH-60 and the AH-64. I graduated flight school in 1985. The Black Hawk had already been in the field for 6 years, and we were anticipating a year later the arrival of the AH-64. By 2030, the Black Hawk will have been in the field for 50 years, and the Apache for 45. I'm sure we'll be looking at those airframes with the same endearing love and affection as today we look at the UH-1, which was the workhorse of Vietnam. So my concern is, and my question, General Gaylor, is the need to shift or at least broaden our focus from what today is, short-term readiness to what needs to be more on the modernization of the force. We haven't heard much, I think, during this Congress, or at least I haven't been in hearings where I've heard much about the future vertical lift program. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, replacing the aging helicopter fleet? I understand production will start in 2030. And what are the impacts to Army aviation modernization plans and programs under the current level of funding?
So, thank you, Congressman. First, in reverse, the current level of funding, we are certainly, based on force structure that we now have as a result of budget realities, we are absolutely strapped to meet demand while simultaneously training for major combat operations at a higher level of readiness, and then while balancing modernization. So it has kind of forced the Chief Staff of the Army to prioritize readiness as the #1 priority. So we will continue to ensure that we have ready forces now to meet the demand and for the future. You're correct. We have lost some modernization spending power over the next coming years, and we do have to make serious choices to invest in that capability. Where we have been left so far at the funding levels is incremental modernization, and there's a unique linkage between incremental modernization and readiness. In order to incrementally modernize our fleets, for example, the H-64s, we have to take existing airframes out of operational units to induct them into a remanufacture line to improve that airframe. That impacts readiness because we're taking aircraft from operational units on which they should be training. On average, across a 24-ship H-64 battalion authorization today, we average between 20 and 21 aircraft in the field because we are forced to incrementally modernize. We do have to change that, and the Future Vertical Lift program is looking at technologies right now that's in a joint multi-role tech demonstrator that will conclude in FY19. That will inform what technologies are feasible to meet a capability requirement that we have on a future battlefield, and then we will aggressively pursue those capabilities as we move forward, because we do have to maintain the legacy fleet viability, though. because as you stated, sir, I mean, these Apaches and these Blackhawks will be in our force for a long period of time, and we have to keep them viable. That's why other parts of modernization are critical to us. The improved turbine engine program to buy back power in those airframes. Both the Apache and the Blackhawk are critical. If we have any CRs, that overall hurts our ability to work developmental efforts.
And let me just take back my time, reclaim my time. Thank you very much. I am concerned about the increasing standoff that forces are now facing, will be facing, and we need to make sure that we're improving both the lethality as well as the reach of our aviation assets. The next question, which I would expect I'd get a response in writing, because I'm going to ask a question, and I don't think with my time remaining you'll be able to answer it, General Nolan. It's a parochial question. I'm in the 4th Congressional District of Maryland. Joint Base Andrews is in my backyard. I'm concerned about the replacement program, the Huey replacement program, and if you could give this committee assurances that the program will not face further delays and that it's on track for award in third quarter of 2018, and if not, why not and when. It's an old fleet. The Huey, surprised that some of them are still in operation. They're having difficulty performing their continuity operations, other base missions at Andrews. So if you could just give us an update on that program back through the committee staff or however that's most appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you very much, Congressman Brown. And we now proceed to Congressman Steve Russell of Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, generals, for being here today. I guess my question would really be for all of you. With respect to flight hours, and General Rudder, thank you for the talking about last year and this year. But could you give us just a brief thumbnail trend of what the average flight hours are currently per month for your pilots?
Congressman Russell, across the United States Air Force, our flight hours per month are going in the right direction. We're increasing them. Across the multiple different series that I have.
I know there's a lot of different airframes, but
it's hard. So, but in our fighter community, trying to keep it apples to apples, we're averaging about 15.6 in our air superiority and right around 16 or so in our general purpose attack.
Okay.
And that's really goes back to our readiness aircrew program, which ties simulators and flight hours together for their training.
interesting. Okay, thank you. Admiral Shoemaker?
Yes, sir. So I would say we're very close to that in aggregate across all type model series. The strike fighter community is a couple hours below, so about 15 and a half across in aggregate, and maybe a couple hours below that for VFA. And just general trends, if I look over time for the annual amount of hours, our TAC air communities have come down from around 250 a year to about right around 190. So that's a drop from 2011 to 2017. Big Wing, the MPRA, E6s and P8s are all have been fairly steady. Same in our rotary force. So the trends down are in our TAC air community.
Okay, thank you. General Rudder?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. It's for our TAC air community, they're coming up. So for our F-18 community, they're hovering around 12.7, and not certainly at the 15-hour. Now, that is by the nature we do calculations. We take off one of our deployed squadrons over there. They're averaging from 40 to 50 hours per pilot a month.
Operational deployment goes up.
Because they're just so, but when we average in a squadron that maybe just returned, it's kind of getting themselves back up on maintenance step. So we're still shooting towards 15. As talked about throughout the Marine Corps, 15.4. We still want to get up to the 16.5 hours, but there's a couple really glimmers of hope out there, and certainly with the CH-53, our heavy lift community, they went from 9 to 13 this past year. So that was a big step for them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, for the active component, it is 10.8 hours currently. For our National Guard, it's around 6.4 and 7.8 for the reserve component. What we try to achieve is 14.5 hours per month per crew to reach a collective readiness level at the battalion level. We could achieve that in our UH and CH-47 fleets. The AH-64 fleet is somewhat capacity limited because of shortages of the airframes and some of the pilots.
Thank you. All right, and the other question I have is on pilot retention and pilot generation. I know there was a lot of hoopla made about maybe bringing retirees in, but really this authority was always available, as I understand it, to the services to recall folks that were retired if they needed to. Do you see an age gap developing because of sessions of new pilots and then trying to retain with incentives and other programs? If y'all could speak to that in the time I have remaining.
Congressman Russell, we just received greater authorization to do it for a longer period of time, so we will be looking at that. I don't anticipate necessarily an age gap. The retirees we intend to bring back, number one, we'll try to fill staff positions, which would then allow our...
Training base maybe also, or?
Yes, sir, and then at training bases, in which case, when you look at your instructor pilot, they all look old to you, so, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that, because a lot of times you have captain instructors, which is not a bad thing. They're current, they're coming from the field, but I was curious on that, so thanks. Admiral Shoemaker.
So we heard about the Air Force's initiative, and actually looking at that in our production world as well, where we're trying to catch back up, certainly in T-45s. Most of you all are familiar with the operational pause we took. In the general trend across the force, though, I think, you know, other than a couple of targeted communities, via the F-18 community and our Growler, Advanced Airborne Electronic Attack, we are meeting our department head requirements with quality.
Thank you. General Rudder.
As we look across our fleet, we expect about a 7% fleet-wide departure rate on a yearly basis. Now, for our TAC Air community, much like Shu just said, you know, we're up around 9.5, 9.9, with the average over the year about 9. So we have seen about a 1%, 1.5% increase in this departure. So we're approaching it from all angles. We're approaching it from our ops tempo, readiness. As you would imagine, pilots want to fly, and when they're not flying, they're not happy, so we're trying to increase the readiness out there. And again, we're trying to give incentives to keep people in. But it is a concern, obviously, when the economy's doing good, airlines are doing good. I think, to include all the helicopter guys and gals out there, they are being approached on a daily and regular basis because there is other shortfalls out there with our airline partners.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, with indulgence, I hate to leave my Army brother, you know, hanging in the wind. If he could answer that with your indulgence. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Thank you, sir, and I'll be brief. Yes, sir, we have targeted specifically some of the more senior qualifications to remain in the operational fleet, and we use heavily some Department of Army civilian aged experienced in the institution, so we watch it carefully.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Congressman Russell. And we now proceed to Congressman Don McEachin of Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you all for being here. General Nolan, would you be kind enough to discuss the intent behind the Air Force Enterprise Range Plan, the potential benefits of the regional training range approach, and what the Air Force hopes to achieve as the ERP process is completed?
Congressman, great question. I'd love to. We believe that the Enterprise Range Plan will make us more efficient. So what we need to do is we need to look at our ranges holistically. Our ranges are national treasures. And so we've got to look right now the way we command and control them. We don't create as many efficiencies as we think we can. So we believe by creating an enterprise range plan and pulling it together regionally, we will be better coordinators with our sister services as we look at how we can possibly expand the ranges and increase investment also in our ranges. We have limited investment dollars. Where do we put the high-end simulators into which ranges so we get the maximum training value out of every sortie we fly?
Thank you, and that's a nice segue into my next question to Admiral Shoemaker and General Rudder. Can you discuss the potential benefits to your services of the Air Force consolidating its 6 regional training ranges? Is there a potential to better leverage these ranges to improve training across all services? And can you also discuss the challenges each of your services face in acquiring technologies like threat emitters that allow your respective service air components to simulate advanced threats?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. As we merge the enterprise plan that General Nolan just described, Our premier training range is obviously Fallon, Nevada. And as we introduce new technologies, we are clearly figuring out that the airspace limits and the electromagnetic spectrum limits are not allowing us to fly those our new platforms to their full capabilities. So it's driving us into a virtual and constructive world. And we've moving out with that with a couple of key facilities in Fallon right now that will link to all of our fleet concentration areas, but certainly tie into our Air Force counterparts. As I talk about Fallon, one of the things we do require, and you mentioned it, sir, were emitters. And the ranges out there are working with some very dated systems. So we bring on our new electronic attack airplanes and certainly the F-35 to be able to practice and train against something more representative of the threats we might see is essential.
Thank you. General?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. I would make as a general statement, our ranges and our airspace that we're able to operate in on a regular basis should be considered a national treasure. And any time that we can increase the efficiency, we should produce that and protect what we have. And when able, when it makes sense, expand airspace, even with the crowded airways as we know them today. There are challenges. We are fortunate to be able to participate in great exercises like Northern Edge and Red Flag and operate out of Fallon or China Lake or other areas around where we can take advantage of their first-rate threat systems that allow us to train at levels we need to train. And with the F-35 coming on board on larger numbers, we will be challenged in the future to make sure that we have the amount of airspace to be able to train with that airplane. No doubt about it. And we've got to get very progressive on how we think about airspace and how we fight this airplane and how we fight the network within our range areas, because there are competing communication bands out there we need to deal with and computing airspace requirements. So I would echo with all my counterparts here that range space is critical, and the more we think through this and make our ranges more complex and more progressive, it will help the joint force all the way around.
I thank each of you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Congressman McEachin. We now proceed to Congressman Salud Carbajal of California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses here today. Marine pilots remain short on average about 1/3 of their required flight hours. 1/3 of the Army's aviation force has been forward deployed at any one time over the past 15 years. The Navy has extended deployments and shortened, eliminated, or deferred aircraft maintenance and training periods. The Air Force does not have enough experienced maintainers to sustain good quality aircrafts, not enough available mission-capable aircrafts to conduct operations, and airmen and airwomen are meeting the minimum training requirements for their deployment missions. We are not doing our part to keep our service members safe, it seems. We are sending our sons and daughters into theaters of war without fully functioning equipment and inadequate training. This is unacceptable, obviously. We are willing to spend $1.2 trillion modernizing our nuclear arsenal, and yet we are unable to take care of more eminent, essential matters, such as fixing our aircrafts, providing more flight time, time-sensitive training, and modernizing aviation infrastructure. Are we really prioritizing readiness? Even under current budgetary constraints, we should be providing our military with the most effective training, even if it means spending less or just not spending on something else. We can't spend on everything. Training should be a top priority. To what extent are the services evaluating the effectiveness of training to ensure that completed training meets its expectations for quality?
Congressman Carbajal, great question. So for the United States Air Force, we've made training a priority. It's a Secretary of Defense, so regaining readiness soonest means rebuilding your operational training infrastructure and funding your training lines. In the A3, we have stood up a whole training division, operational training infrastructure, led by two-star Major General Scott Smith, whose sole job is to come in and think about it every day and then advocate and work with our commanders to make sure we can improve our training capability.
Congressman, I think we've been fairly successful, and at least as CNO has talked about minimizing the extensions to deployments and trying to stay within his 7-month goal, and that's been the case so far. But obviously, real world events will play into that. As we work our air wings and carries up, we work through the optimized fleet response plan, and that right now I think is a good model for us to take the resources we are given. Although we could certainly, as we've talked about earlier, do more as we're working up. But that gives us the ability, with the resources given, to generate the best capabilities for our forces moving forward. Now, we are accepting risk on the early parts of that workup cycle, but we make sure that as we get into the more integrated and advanced, we've got the resources they need: airplanes, people, and flying hour dollars, ordnance to deliver, so that our energies are focused on those next to deploy and on deployment. They're ready. They're certified. They're ready and certified forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd echo what you just said. Is the Commandant's priority is to make sure that when forces go out the door on deployment, that they're ready to go. And that may come at expense of some of the remain behind forces. That's where we get the challenge of a ready bench behind. But our forces, before they go forward, are given the appropriate workup time, and they do get certified before they go out each time. Back to another point you made, I think where we're trying to balance our readiness counts is, what we have done in the Marine Corps, and I think all the services, we defer buying new airplanes or new stuff, if you will, to pull that money into our readiness account. So we're balancing both the really new stuff for the capability we need for the future fight, with making sure our readiness is right. So when we do send Marines and sailors out the door, that they have the right gear at the right time, at the right readiness level.
Sir, I would echo that it is a balance, certainly to meet demand, train for the future, assess your readiness for both, and then to modernize. We take it very seriously. Certainly every aviator that deploys is incredibly
Hayward, and I currently attend Suffolk County Community College, and this is my last semester. I've been accepted to attend Long Island University for social work in the spring, but if I don't, thank you. I hope to pursue a career in the Navy if I don't attend. I love fashion, and I currently work at Macy's. I'm smart and kind, and I just got my driver's license, and I'm working on a car. I'm a former foster youth and was adopted after aging out of foster care at the age of 21. I've been in several different family situations and group homes. I was the teen who told everyone I didn't want a family and didn't want to be adopted. One day that changed, and I said it. I do need a family. I just didn't want to get hurt. After I was adopted, I shared the news and was asked, "Aren't you too old to be adopted?" And I said, "You're never too old to have a family." Everyone needs someone to truly love them and to be there for them, no matter what. Family is important. It means being able to go home for the holidays, having someone to celebrate the milestones with graduating from college, a first job, or getting your driver's license for the first time. If I could reach out to other youth currently in foster care, I would say to them, don't give up on what you want. Don't be scared to give a family a chance. And to all the workers, I would also say, don't give up. Keep advocating for the youth, because some of them may be scared, and some may not understand what a permanent family really means or what a family truly can be. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm June Doran, the National Adoption Specialist in the Children's Bureau, and I am happy to now introduce what will be the final section of our program today, the presentation of the Adoption Excellence Awards. Just a word about these, though we actually have 5 categories of Adoption Excellence Awards that include family contributions, individual and professionals, business contributions, the media, and child welfare or judicial system change. This year, all 7 awardees are in the individual professional category. And so we decided to do something slightly different, in which we have a smaller number of awardees, and they're in the individual and professional category. We asked 1 to 2 individuals that would speak, that know each awardee personally, and were part of supporting their nomination to be here and speak about that awardee. And we are going to also ask our Associate Commissioner Jerry Milner back to, he will present an award and have a photo opportunity with each awardee. So each person that's presenting and speaking about an awardee will come to the podium and introduce themselves. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sandy Fisher, and I'm going to be introducing Dr. Jill Waterman. Dr. Jill Waterman is a partially retired professor of psychology at UCLA. She has given up teaching classes and running the psychology clinic, but she continues to do the work of 2 to 3 people at Ties for Families, which is the UCLA program that, in conjunction with Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services, supports and guides families who are adopting children, infants, and youth from foster care. Jill joined the program just after its inception by Susan Edelstein, and now, 24 years later, the program staff numbers 25. So they went from 2 to 25. TIES serves people from birth through age 21, some of whom have been receiving services for almost that long, with an interdisciplinary team that includes psychologists, social workers, a pediatrician, a psychiatrist, a speech and language therapist, an education consultant, behavioral specialist, and an occupational therapist. So it's one-stop shopping for the families. They can go to the program and receive a lot of their needs. Jill started the infant mental health program at TIES and has run it for 14 years. This aspect of the program provides prospective parents with specific information about their child's history based on Department of Children and Family Services records. And Jill told me this morning that they do these pre-placement discussions for children of all ages, and they have done 10,000 of them. Present for 10,000. Well, it's a pretty, I mean, LA's big, but that's a lot of people. And I have to say, I worked at TIES for 9 years, and I've worked in different agencies as well. DCFS does not hand over its records very easily. We struggle to get them, but they very willingly give TIES all of the information so that they can fully inform the families about what has happened with their children and how they're behaving prior to placement. As the head of the infant mental health, she conducts developmental assessments, and she's taught a whole generation of infant mental health assessment. I've seen her sit under tables and hand blocks, overhead to a parent who is dealing with a reluctant child. So there are many people who now know how to assess children because of Jill. She does home visiting individually and with staff and students. She runs groups for infants and toddlers and their families. And this is an opportunity. I ran some groups for older children, and it was a place where the kids knew that everybody else was in the same situation. They were in foster adopt care. And so unlike Keontae, who talked about being the only one in the world who was in foster care, these kids had a whole group of friends who were in the same situation. Let's see. Jill also supervises undergraduate and graduate students in their clinical work, and in this way, she's influenced the next and future generations of clinicians with her warm, supportive, and insightful way of understanding others and their behaviors. Jill has an uncanny knack for finding new employees for TIES. She found me on the hiking trail, and she has a nearly infallible ability to know after one meeting who will fit or won't fit within the TIES culture. Jill's been instrumental in designing and implementing the longitudinal research project at TIES. She's particularly proud, and rightly so, of their recent follow-up studies of the late adolescents and young adults who were in the original research cohort. And it is amazing. I mean, these are people who willingly came back to share their experiences many years after being adopted. Jill is a member of the TIES management team who guide and direct the future generation of the program. Yesterday, Jill and some of her colleagues submitted the manuscript for their ADAPT training manual, soon to be at a bookstore, at least Amazon near you, which will disseminate their evidence-based treatment for adoptees and their families. It's amazing to me that anybody else at TIES has any work to do, since she does so much. In her free time, Jill is a devoted mother to 2 adult sons and is the beaming soon-to-be grandma. She's an avid hiker and traveler, so there's still hope for you, Raynell. She's taken up painting watercolors, and her work has been featured in a number of juried shows. She writes hilarious poems for celebrations like birthdays and retirements. Staff at TIES excitedly wait for Jill to do their colors, which means she checks not your aura, but what looks good on you based on your hair color and your skin tone, although some of us don't ever listen to her, although we should. Most of all, she's a trusted and treasured friend, and I strongly appreciate HSS and the Children's Bureau for honoring Jill for more than 20 years of dedication to adoptees and their families. She certainly deserves the recognition.
Ms. Connor could not be with us in person today, but I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share information about her excellent work. Janet Benoit Connor has been a key member for over 9 years of the Vermont Child Welfare Training Partnership with the University of Vermont and provides training for the Department of Children and Families in Vermont. Her commitment to outstanding training and her leadership and innovation in the field of adoption has had a great impact across the state, resulting in supports and resources for pre-adoptive and adoptive families. During her tenure in the adoption field, she developed new approaches to engaging adoptive parents in training and in advocacy, and has sustained collaborative partnerships with the Vermont Adoption Consortium, Vermont Kin as Parents, Vermont Foster and Adoptive Families Association, and the Caregiver Training Collaborative. In addition to her commitment to training and advocacy for adoptive families, she has provided workforce development opportunities for child welfare, for mental health, and for school professionals to be more adoption competent. Please join me in congratulating Ms. Connor on her well-deserved Adoption Excellence Award.
Good afternoon. I'm Christine Feldman, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about Elizabeth Richmond. Elizabeth has become a legend in her own time, not only in central Illinois, where she resides, but in the whole state of Illinois, as well as now the national stage, literally where we are today, as she receives the Adoption Excellence Award. Like many adoptive and foster parents, Elizabeth and her husband, Tom, fostered over 40 children and added to their family by adopting 3, of which are now an older teen and 2 20-somethings. And since Elizabeth was a very little girl, stories about her abound, about how she wanted, even at a very young age, to make life better for children. And she carried that passion for helping kids into her personal life, obviously, and also into her professional life. She started out by getting a master's in counseling and became a therapist. Then she became a a professional who ran a wellness program for a university. And then she did some work with Family to Family. And then she came upon her real calling, which is advocacy with a capital A. Because Elizabeth couldn't stand to see hurdles that got in the way of families going towards adoption. When Elizabeth saw systemic barriers that prevented foster parents from going forward with adoption or matching children with families, she became a pride trainer so that she could make sure that families got quality information and accurate information to apply to their movement towards permanency for kids. When she saw barriers such as when parents who had gone through pre-service training needed support far longer than that pre-service training would provide, she became a foster parent support specialist and even became the lead. In fact, in Illinois, she knows the practical solutions. She knows the workarounds. She's the person who people call and say, how do I get something done? And she tells them how. Then Elizabeth realized that if you really want to be a true advocate, you need to have the ear of the director of the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, and you need that director to listen to you and to hear what your suggestions for how families should be supported, adoptive families should be supported. And so she became the co-chair of the Illinois Adoption Advisory Council and has that position today. She's had a great deal of experience working to make systemic changes in Illinois by not only her work with the Illinois Adoption Advisory Council, but also with the Central Region and statewide Foster Parent Advisory Council. So she has taken advocacy to the very top. She also has continued this leadership for over 20 years and through numerous administrations, both in the different governors we've had in Illinois and also with the different directors we've had in Illinois. And she is very often asked to weigh in on different issues having to do with adoption, about programs, about policy, and how we should get things done. For over 20 years, she has been a strong voice for adoptive families and children in Illinois, and it's through her professional leadership that adoptive families have a place at the table.
There's not much to say after that, right? But I'm going to add a little bit more. We did this together, so we nominated Elizabeth together. So my name is Melinda Liss, and I had the pleasure of meeting Elizabeth in 2000 when I was a very young worker at the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. And at that time, Elizabeth had just started her chair, as Christine mentioned, as the first person that was appointed as a co-chair for the Illinois Adoption Advisory Council. And I will tell you, she was a force to be reckoned with. You learned really early on, if you were asked to present at this council on a program or policy by the director, that you needed to have all your ducks in a row, and you needed to ensure that you had thought through really how it would impact children and families. Because this group always cut to the chase, and their vision was laser focused. This was primarily due because of Elizabeth's strong leadership and her desire to improve the adoption process in Illinois. Needless to say, when I started working with Illinois again in 2014, after being out of the state for over 10 years, I was shocked to find that she was still the chair. As a volunteer, we should say, too. However, I was also thrilled because at that time I was in the role as a project director for the National Quality Improvement Center for Adoption and Guardianship, Support and Preservation, and I knew immediately that we would have a champion in Illinois. And that was true. Elizabeth became the chair of the Illinois Stakeholder Advisory Team for this national project, and she has been and continues to be a force in regards to getting families to buy into what we're trying to do and to work with both the national staff as well as the local staff there at DCFS and private agencies to ensure that the parent and child voice is never forgotten in our discussions. You see, at the heart of Elizabeth's work is her true belief that all children deserve a safe, loving, and nurturing home. This shines through in her personal life and also in her professional life. as she works as a foster adoptive parent, as Christine talked about, but also in her professional life, she works on both a direct and macro level to eliminate systemic barriers. And Christine mentioned many of these. But she's always there to ensure that families have the knowledge, the skills, and supports that they need to make a lifelong commitment to a child. It is said that great leaders inspires confidence in other people and moves them toward action. Elizabeth embodies this characteristic. She's one of those unsung heroes who day after day makes a difference in the lives of children and families. She never loses focus, and she's always passionate about her work.
It is a delight and an honor for me to introduce Gary Mallon as an Adoption Excellence Award winner. For more than 42 years, Gary has been a child welfare professional, and he is a national leader in child welfare. By his personal and professional example, he has inspired and motivated countless children, youth, and families, as well as worked with child welfare agencies across the country, always seeking to improve services. I first met Gary and had the pleasure of working with him when he became the director of the Children's Bureau's National Resource Center for Permanency and Family Connections. In that role for 14 years, he provided outstanding training and technical assistance in all 50 states, many tribal communities, and several territories, moving those systems towards positive permanency outcomes for children, youth, and families. I have to mention, too, during that time, Gary worked on the ground, shoulder to shoulder with the Gulf Coast states to help them rebuild their devastated child welfare systems after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. After his tenure at the NRC, he developed the National Center for Child Welfare Excellence at the Silberman School of Social Work and continues to work with individual agencies, local entities, and states to assist them in making systemic changes that promote permanency for children and young people. He has extensively researched and written about LGBT foster and adoptive parents and how systems could become more competent in caring for LGBTQ youth in foster care. As the Julia Lathrop Professor of Child Welfare at the Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College, for the past 24 years, Dr. Mallon has chaired the Child Welfare Sequence and developed and taught classes in foster care and adoption to MSW students. He developed an adoption course which he has taught in New York, Massachusetts, and for the past 10 years in Louisiana, and has shared that curriculum with colleagues across the country. Gary is not only a child welfare professional, a researcher, an author, and an editor, but he's also a foster parent and an adoptive parent. As one person said in his nomination, he not only talks the talk, he walks the walk. His entire personal and professional life have been dedicated to helping children, youth, and families. And through it all, he has kept that twinkle in his eye and had that great sense of humor. Join me in congratulating Gary on this well-deserved Adoption Excellence Award.
It is really my honor to introduce my good friend and esteemed colleague, and as the world of adoption has come to know, my work husband. John and I have worked together for, we thought when we talked last night, I think at least 20 years, back to 1997. Work very closely. We first met at the National Association of State Adoption Program Managers, and then we also served together on the advisory group that helped to create Adopt U.S. Kids. We became fast friends, and I have nothing but respect for all of the work that John has done. Now, I've got a lot of personal stories I could share about him, but we should probably save that for later. But I do want to focus on his professional accomplishments, his contributions to child welfare, and most importantly, his unwavering dedication to children, youth, and families. Over 35 years of professional service, John has made so many contributions that have resulted in positive permanency outcomes for thousands and thousands of children and youth. His professional career began in the state of Maine, where, like many of us, he started out on the front line in child protection, worked his way up through the system, eventually becoming the state adoption program manager for Maine. During that time, he served on the board of NASAP, the Adoption Program Managers Organization, where really his spirit of collaboration was a major support for the association's primary goal of peer-to-peer relationship development and learning from one another to improve outcomes for children across the United States. When John retired from the state of Maine in 2002, he didn't really retire. Almost immediately, he began working with the National Resource Center for Adoption, another one of the Children's Bureau's projects, where he had a key role in the achievement of effective capacity building and positive adoption outcomes for states, tribes, and territories. He also served on the board of the North American Council of Adoptable Children, NACAC, who is here today. And then during the same time, he made singular contributions to the process of the then Children's Bureau Training and Technical Assistance Network. Of special note and great personal importance to me is John's time and dedication to Adopt U.S. Kids. As I said earlier, we served together on the planning group for the project. We both served on the first work group for the first 5 years that the project was in operation. John also helped with our technical assistance and regional roundtables across the country, again, supporting that peer-to-peer learning opportunity. But then in 2013, John came out of retirement yet again and came on board at Adopt U.S. Kids as the Deputy Project Director. He served in this position until he retired again in June of this year. But while on board, and John, you don't know this yet, these are brand new numbers for you to know. He was tasked with creating a new interaction with families who contact us using research. What is it that families who come to us saying, I want to foster or adopt, tell me about that. What are the key things that we want them to know? And so he worked with our team that's sitting in the back row over here to develop what we call the READiness model, where each letter stands for something. It's respond to the families, engage them, help them with the self-assessment if this is the right thing for them to do, educate them or inform them, develop them, help them to develop their capacity, and inform them about resources that will be valuable to them, and then continue to support them from that very first contact until they get engaged with the state services and beyond. So, John, this was a great experiment, and only under your leadership have we been able to accomplish the following. Of the families surveyed, the families that we moved on to the states because they thought they were ready to take that next step, 87% tell us that they are clear or mostly clear on what are the characteristics of children in care. No more babies, healthy newborn babies. 86% tell us they understand the impact of trauma, which was really a brand new thing for our interaction with families. 72% say they understand the steps that they need to go through to become approved to foster or adopt. 87% understand the need for support and services all throughout the process and after placement. And then lastly, the families, 94% of the families now tell us that they understand what are the characteristics and supports that they're going to need to continue this journey. So just for that alone, John is more than deserving of this award. Lastly, I want to make a comment, and there are others from Adopt US Kids here. John, one of the most important things that you've done for us is to teach us how important it is.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us for today on this Thanksgiving edition of News Now. We will see you again tomorrow for Black Friday News Now.